listening to Combat Sports UK.
Combat Sports UK.
Welcome back to Combat Sports UK. Today we have our British Fighter Awards for 2024. Now, I've got 5 nominations for each award. I've got 5 awards in total. If you think I miss any off, by all means leave them in the comments. And here we go with the following awards for 2024. Our first award will be Submission of the Year. We'll go to Cage Warriors for this first nomination. It will be Liam Gittins, and in March he defended his bantamweight crown against Roberto Hernandez. Now, this was a great fight, and it was at Cage Warriors 168 in the main event. He did manage to pull off his rear naked choke submission, and that was in round 5. So in the very final round of that fight, he managed to put a statement on it and really solidify himself as a great champion of Cage Warriors, beckoning on the doors of the UFC. Possibly at some point in 2025 we may see him there, but it was definitely a perfect performance from Liam Gittins, and getting that submission in round 5 really did put a stamp on it. He is our first nomination for Submission of the Year. Moving forward, we look at Cage Warriors 169, where we see a Mitchell Good making his professional debut. Now, this was against Angus, who a real tough veteran across the UK MMA scene. Mitchell Good pulled off a buggy choke in his pro debut in round 3. It was absolutely unbelievable. It was one of the highlights of the calendar year for Cage Warriors, and a real statement performance, especially on your professional debut. So a really special submission from Mitchell Good, and he's well worth his nomination here for Submission of the Year. For our third nomination, we go to Liverpool for the main man, Paddy Pimblett, picking up his round 1 submission of Bobby Green at UFC 304. Now, this triangle choke was absolutely outrageous. He submitted him, broke his arm. It was all in one go. It was a really spectacular performance from Paddy Pimblett, and it really got the crowd going, even at 5 a.m, whenever it was. It was a really truly coming out party for Paddy Pimblett. He got performance of the night bonus, and I think it's personally his best performance to date in the UFC. It was a great finish for him, and hopefully we can see more of that in 2025 moving forward. Our fourth nomination goes to the Scotsman Sean Clancy Jr. over in Cage Warriors. He's had a perfect year and gone 3-0 in 2024. The performance I picked out was at Cage Warriors 176, and he got a round 1 rear naked choke of Rafael Aronov. Now, this was a quick finish for him. It was just over 60 seconds it took to get that choke synced in. Now, for Sean Clancy Jr., he's looking at title pictures next in 2025. But this year in 2024, it was really was the year for Sean Clancy Jr. making a name for himself in Cage Warriors, and he could be looking at welterweight gold in the new year. Our fifth and final nomination for Submission of the Year goes to Solomon Simon. Now, the Irish prospect in Cage Warriors is now 5-0 moving into 2025, and he capped the year off in November with a really skilled finish of Walter Cogliandro. Now, this was a ninja choke finish that he got at the end of round 3, and this was within 6 seconds left of the very final round. Now, this is something that Solomon Simon has made a name of himself for. His last 3 wins have all been really close at the end of rounds and really picking up those submissions. So a real true prospect to watch, especially in that featherweight division. Could we see Solomon Simon against Harry Hardwick in 2025? I do think so, and it would be a special fight. But Solomon Simon picks up our final nomination for Submission of the Year 2024. And that's 5 great nominations for our Submission of the Year award. It does go to our winner, Paddy Pimblett, unsurprisingly, for that tremendous triangle choke of Bobby Green at UFC 304. It was a really special performance from Paddy, and we expect more from him in 2025. Our second award is everyone's favourite, Knockout of the Year. We've got 5 nominations coming up, all spectacular knockouts, all with their own right for being on this list for Knockout of the Year. Now, first up, we go to the PFL. Now, Shanelle Dyer picked up a phenomenal head kick KO in round 1 over Mariam Torchinava. Now, this was a really under the radar fight. Shanelle Dyer is a real up and coming prospect out of the UK. She's now 5-0 after 2 great victories this year in the PFL. Now she looks to push on in 2025, and hopefully 2025 could be the year we see a resurgence like we've seen with Dakota Ditcheva this year, of a real young prospect from the UK, a female prospect, and Shanelle Dyer is one to watch for 2025. Now, we've just mentioned UFC 304 with Paddy Pimblett, we will go to the co-main event to see Tom Aspinall. He faced the demon that is Curtis Blaydes. The last time he was in an octagon with that man, his leg was shattered within 15 seconds. This time, not the case. 1 minute in, he raises his hand with a great knockout victory of Curtis Blaydes, followed up with some vicious ground and pound, 15-16 unanswered punches. It was a real, true performance for Tom Aspinall, and really did show there is one heavyweight king, and that is Tom Aspinall. His interim belt will surely be unified in 2025. Our third nomination is from Dana White's Contender Series in August. It was Lonnie Kavanagh taking on Antoine Ho, both undefeated prospects, both with big hype behind them. And it was our man, Lonnie Kavanagh, who got a special knockout in round 1. It was a lightning left hook from Lonnie Kavanagh. It had Dana White doing backflips out of his chair. It was one of the best knockouts you'll see this year, and it was on Dana White Contender Series, so he is our third nomination for Knockout of the Year. Our fourth nomination is the worst kept secret in UK MMA. It is Luke Riley, who moved to 10-0 this year and is right on the cusp of that UFC shot. I believe Dana White is belling him up every single day. In September, he fought Alexander Jr. at Cage Warriors 178 and knocked him out with a rapid right-hand counter in the very first round. Who else is there for Luke Riley to face? If it's not Harry Hardwick, it has to be a shot at the UFC, and that is going to be something that we could hopefully see in March of 2025. Now, last and definitely not least is our final nomination for KO of the Year. It goes to the Welsh gangster Oban Elliot at UFC 309. He was there at Madison Square Gardens on the prelims, and he was facing Basil Hafez, a tough test for the man. But again, he flew through it. Flying colours were passed, and like I said, round 3 was a phenomenal knockout for Oban Elliot, a right overhand, and it was done. Basil Hafez was out, and Oban Elliot lit the world on fire. Gangster Mania, well and truly, was running wild. Oban Elliot, you get our fifth and final nomination for KO of the Year 2024. Our 5 brilliant nominations for our Knockout of the Year, but the winner can only be one person. That person is Shanelle Dyer. Now, the knockout at PFL Newcastle was vicious. It's one of the most violent KOs you'll see in 2024. The opponent, Mariam Torchinava, 9-2. The Georgian was vastly experienced, and Shanelle Dyer lit her up on the feet. Her kicks were immaculate all fight, and then that head kick KO stunned her up against the cage, and she was still violent, and that's what we want from a KO. Shanelle Dyer, you are our KO of the Year winner for 2024. For our third award, this will be Performance of the Year. Now, this is a UK fighter that has put on one of their best ever performances and really shone under the spotlight in 2024. There will be 5 nominations for this award. Now, for our first nomination, we go to the UFC. In May, Lerone Murphy got his first main event slot against the MMA legend that is Edson Barbosa, who is a striking master. Now, Lerone Murphy went into this fight with a lot of expectation on his shoulders. This is his chance to show out, to show he's a true contender at 145 pounds, and he did just that. It was a brilliant performance from Lerone Murphy. There was grueling, bloody parts of that fight that he pushed through and came through with flying colours. So it was a real brilliant performance from Lerone Murphy. For his first main event, he showed that he is a true contender at 145 pounds moving forward. We remain with the UFC as we move to UFC 304 with 2 fighters we have previously mentioned, Paddy Pimblett and Tom Aspinall. They both had excellent performances on that night in Manchester. Paddy Pimblett picking up that submission over Bobby Green in round 1 in tremendous fashion. That is your second nomination for Performance of the Year. You've got Tom Aspinall then in the co-main event defending his interim belt against the man he has lost to in the UFC. He put that loss to bed with a brilliant ground and pound finish within just 60 seconds. Those are your second and third nominations for Performance of the Year. For our 4th nomination, we go to Cage Warriors, and 145-pound champion Harry Hardwick defended his belt for the first time in November. He faced Kawani Lopez. Now, Kawani Lopez was 11-fight win streak going into this fight with 9 finishes. He was a violent, vicious and dangerous opponent for Harry Hardwick, and Harry Hardwick schooled him. He put manners on the Brazilian. It was a brilliant performance from start to finish, and the finish came in round 4. It was a brutal finish for Harry Hardwick, and it was one of the best performances you'll see in Cage Warriors this year and on UK shores. Harry Hardwick gets our 4th nomination for Performance of the Year with his win against Kawani Lopez at Cage Warriors 181. Our final nomination for Performance of the Year is the hottest prospect in all of MMA. She's called a prospect, however, she is now a world champion. Dakota Ditcheva won her belt in the PFL with a beautiful performance against Talia Santos. A round 2 TKO via violent body shots won her that belt, and she is now the crown jewel in the PFL. The UFC must be begging to get her onto the roster, and I think she will get there in 2025. For the performance itself in November, it was really, truly something you don't see happen to Talia Santos. Valentina Shevchenko could not finish her, and Dakota Ditcheva got her out of there within 2 rounds. It was simply sublime. And Dakota Ditcheva, that is your 5th nomination for Performance of the Year. Now, that is 5 brilliant performances, all worthy of their nominations for Performance of the Year, but it has to go to one man, and that is Tom Aspinall. With his performance over Curtis Blades at UFC 304, it was a stunning knockout, and against a man who is the only man to defeat him in the UFC octagon. It was a case of facing those demons. The last time he was in that cage was a devastating defeat. Now, to step in on home soil in Manchester as well and show up like that as the defending champion of an interim belt, the first man to ever do that, Tom Aspinall. When the pressure was on your shoulders, you shone the brightest. You get Performance of the Year 2024. Our 4th award is Fight of the Year. This is a fight containing a UK fighter, which was simply sensational to witness in 2024. There are 5 excellent nominations, and here they are. First up, we go to Cage Warriors 169 in March, where Lonnie Kavanagh, who is now a successful UFC fighter, fought Sean Da Silva. Now, when this fight was made, the Cage Warriors matchmakers knew what they were doing, because this was one of the most requested fights in 2024, and the flyweight fight did live up to expectation. Most flyweight fights are always fast-paced and full of action, and this was one of those fights. It was buzzer beater stuff. It was end-to-end. It was an excellent fight, back and forth. It was Lonnie Kavanagh who did pick up the decision victory, but it was an excellent fight, and I do definitely recommend to go back and watch it. It was one of Lonnie Kavanagh's tougher performances that he did get through with an excellent performance, and it was one of our nominations for Fight of the Year. Moving on, we go to Lerone Murphy in that main event we have just mentioned against Edson Barbosa. Now, Lerone Murphy did pick up the win in unanimous decision fashion, but it was a great fight. Edson Barbosa was there, and he was not out of the fight at any point. Lerone Murphy really did show his class in the end of it and get that victory, but it was a brilliant fight, back and forth, and one fight of the night itself on the event. So it was a brilliant performance by Lerone Murphy, but Edson Barbosa definitely played his part, and it was not out of the fight at any point. So that's an excellent fight, and that was in May this year, and that is our 2nd nomination for Fight of the Year 2024. Now, moving into the summer, into July, we do have Cage Warriors 175, July 25th, a few nights before UFC 304. Now, on this card, you find Mason Jones, a former UFC fighter, now back in Cage Warriors, reinventing himself because he's now on a great win streak again. I expect he'll be back in the UFC in no time. The Welshman fought Michael Pagani. Now, this was a brilliant fight. Again, this is one where the matchmakers at Cage Warriors knew what they were doing, because these two lightweights really know how to put on a show. It was a brilliant back and forth, real bloody war, and Mason Jones did get his hand raised at the end of it via decision. And again, it was one of those fights, true guts and determination throughout from both men, and both men really know how to put on a show. So Mason Jones against Michael Pagani, if you have not watched, go back and find it. It will be on Fight Pass, and it is a great 15 minutes to get involved in. Now, for our Fight of the Year nominations, ideally, we would like to be seeing all 5 rounds for the fight. But for some occasions, the fight's just so good. Even though there is a finish in the end of it, it has to get a nomination on this list. One of those fights was at UFC 304, and it was Modestas Bukauskas against Marcin Prachnio. Now, the fight did end in round 3 by an arm triangle choke for Bukauskas, but the fight itself from the first opening seconds was absolute chaos, back and forth. Prachnio was rocked throughout the fight. Bukauskas got a clean head kick, and he was rocking on his feet back and forth, and then eventually pulled it back and got that submission in round 3. It was a great comeback victory for him, but the fight itself was pure chaos from the opening seconds. So that's why it gets our 4th nomination for Fight of the Year. Now, this final nomination for Fight of the Year was truly spectacular. It is one of the best fights you will ever see. It will get any fan that is not yet a fight fan into fight sports, and that is quite obviously in the PFL. In September, we saw Lewis McGrillen versus Dean Garnett. Now, this fight is spectacular. There are over 12 knockdowns, both men dropping to the canvas on numerous occasions, back and forths. It went viral, whether it was all over PFL's Twitter, it was all over MMA Twitter, it was everywhere. It's one of the best fights you will see, not just this year, probably this decade. It is sensational. And Lewis McGrillen, the hard-nosed Mancunian, the ginger mullet himself, did pick up $100,000 at the end of this year. He's had an amazing year, and this performance in September is one of those highlights. He did pick up that win, but all credit to Dean Garnett. He had his moments in the fight, and it was a brilliant back and forth. Definitely worthy of our final nomination for Fight of the Year 2024. 5 fantastic nominations for our Fight of the Year for 2024. Now, I think it's quite obvious where we're going with this winner, and yes, it is the PFL's own Lewis McGrillen versus Dean Garnett. An absolute barn burner. It was really, really special, and I would recommend anyone who likes any sort of fighting to go and watch it, because you'll watch it and you want to watch it again and again and again. One of the best fights you'll see, like I said, not just this year, probably this decade. A brilliant back and forth. All credit to Garnett, all credit to Lewis McGrillen. A brilliant fight, well worthy of this win here with the Fight of the Year 2024. Finally, we are at our last award, and this is your British Fighter of the Year. I have picked out a Welsh fighter, a Scottish fighter, an Irish fighter, and a couple of English fighters, all as great nominations for this award. Now, the criteria for the award was to have at least 3 victories in 2024 and ideally be unbeaten in that time. Let's take a look at the following nomination. Our first nomination is the Welsh gangster, Oban Elliot. A phenomenal debut year in the UFC, and he has really shone into stardom. Now, he is a fan favourite. If some may say, he's on Ariel Helwani every other week. He's best pals with Chael Sonnen. He's had a sensational year, has the Welsh gangster. We'll go through it on a fighting perspective. 3-0 in 2024, one finish in that time. That finish did come against Basil Hafez at UFC 309 this November just gone. His 2 other performances earlier in the year, Val Woodburn on debut, got that win under those UFC lights. First win, vital. Second win at UFC 304 against Preston Parsons. A real mature performance from Oban Elliot, and it was really, really satisfying to see him get a finish finally against Basil Hafez. So here's your first nomination for Fighter of the Year, Oban Elliot, the Welsh gangster. Our second nomination is the Irishman Paul Hughes. He's had a great year over in Bellator. He is now 3-0 with 2 finishes in 2024. The first of those finishes was against Fabiano Silva. He then followed that up with a finish over Bobby King. Some violence in those fights. You then look towards the end of the year, he fights AJ McKee Jr., Bellator's best prospect, one of their highlights, one of the faces of the company, and he beats him. And he beats him well. Even though it is a slight close decision, we all think Paul Hughes did win that comfortably. And for that victory, he now moves on to Usman Nurmagomedov, lightweight champion. We are seeing that in the early stages of 2025. So for Paul Hughes, what an excellent year 2024 is, and what an excellent year 2025 could well be. Paul Hughes, your second nomination for Fighter of the Year. The third nomination is Lewis McGrillen. The ginger mullet is on the list again. He is 3-0 in 2024 with 2 excellent finishes. The first fight of the year against Matis Zaharos, that was a decision win for him. He then kicked it off in September with that excellent barn burner against Dean Garnett. He got that finish in that fight. And then just recently, he's picked up $100,000 to take back to Manchester for some guns. I believe he likes shooting and hunting. So he's picked that up with a finish over Alexander Luster, a real tough fighter as well. He got an excellent finish. And again, another action-packed fight for him. So Lewis McGrillen has had a sensational year, and $100,000 extra, that'll make everyone's year perfect. So for 2024, your third nomination of Fighter of the Year is Lewis McGrillen. The fourth nomination is Scotland's own Sean Clancy Jr. Now, a bit of a low-key name on the list. He is now 6-0, but he has had an exceptional 2024. 3-0 and 3 finishes. That 100% finish rate has really bumped him up onto this list. Now, in Cage Warriors, he is on the verge of a shot at that welterweight title. His wins this year have come against Lucas Rodriguez, Rafael Aronov, and also Andre Augusto. Those have all been excellent wins and finishes, so he really is surging towards gold in Cage Warriors, and especially that 170-pound title. Finally, our last nomination for Fighter of the Year is, of course, the one, the only, Dakota Ditcheva. She is 4-0 in 2024, and of course that is 4 finishes, a 100% finish rate for Dakota. She started the year off very well with her back-to-back wins. Lisa Molden out in the first round, Chelsea Hackett out in the first round. She then follows that up with Jenna Bishop with another first round finish, and she's surging towards that £1 million check for the PFL. She runs into Talia Santos, a tough veteran, especially of the UFC, a former title challenger. This is by far the toughest test Dakota Ditcheva has ever faced in her career. She's been called a can crusher previously. This is now the test for her. And what does she do? She passes that test with flying colours. Really, really spectacular performance, dispatching Santos within 2 rounds. Something, like I said, Valentina Shevchenko could not do. So for Dakota Ditcheva, it's been one hell of a year. £1 million check is on her way as well. It's going to make the year far better for her as well. 2025 can only get better for Dakota Ditcheva, our 5th and final nomination for British Fighter of the Year. Those are your final 5 nominations, and that is for Fighter of the Year. They have all had exceptional years, but I think this year belongs to one person and one person only, and that is Dakota Ditcheva. Now 4-0, 4 finishes, 100% finish rate. This has been the year of Dakota Ditcheva. She's proved herself as one of the best female fighters on the planet, and by far one of the best 125-pound fighters there is currently, whether that's in the UFC, the PFL, Bellator, wherever. Now, wherever she does go in 2025, I think we should all be on the train and watching her fights, because she is by far the most exciting female fighter on planet Earth right now. Dakota Ditcheva is the Fighter of the Year 2024. And there we have it. Those are our awards for British Fighters 2024. Thank you for watching here at Combat Sports UK. If you have got any suggestions that I've missed out, by all means leave them in the comments below. If you like content like this, if you like combat sports, by all means this is going to be the place for you. Like, follow, comment and subscribe to keep up with more content. We're going big in 2025, and by all means, this is going to be the place to be to catch up with all your news, podcasts, everything like that. It's all going to be here for you at Combat Sports UK. Have a good new year and take care.